Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. And if you haven't, could you just do me a solid? I have some more amazing information in the Lynette Hooker investigation. If you have been following our Drop Dead Serious coverage of what happened to Lynette Hooker and where her husband Brian has just sort of vanished to, this is really good news. First of all, we broke the news that his sailing yacht that he did own with Lynette, was interdicted off the coast of Florida and towed in by the United States Coast Guard and the Investigative Services Branch that has been doing an investigation, a criminal investigation into what happened to Lynette. These CGIS officers, Coast Guard Investigative Services officers, are on this case like glue. I know a bunch of podcasters have been calling them FBI. I don't know why. It is not the FBI, y'all. These guys are different, and they're really, really good at this. They are like the FBI of the water. So it's their investigation, and they're the ones that did something today that we saw. And I believe this may be exclusive because I'm not seeing other reporters out there. I think everybody flocked there yesterday once they saw our video of, Soulmate being towed in by the 45-foot boat, the Coast Guard boat. But today, we're seeing the actual work product of what warrants do. Much like when you see a home or a car or a garage or a business being raided by federal agents, that is what happened aboard Soulmate today. So my assumption is the warrants were requested and were issued because federal agents from the United States Coast Guard Investigative Services, CGIS, you can see it on the backs of their blue shirts, CGIS, they boarded Soulmate and they raided that mother. So there were boxes and all sorts of gear coming off that boat. And the agents, as we could see from a land position, set up a table for processing said material extracted from said crime scene. And I call it a crime scene because it is officially a crime scene. How do I know that? Well, I guessed it, but also crime scene tape went up around it today, late in the day. So now officially that boat is a crime scene roped up with crime scene tape, which means they will likely go back and forth on that boat and continue to process that crime scene. So I was super interested seeing these federal agents with the blue nitrile gloves, just like all good investigators do, putting some of the equipment that they brought off board into these manila kind of brown evidence bags, the evidence envelopes. You can even see evidence across it, and then sealing them because chain of custody is everything, y'all, especially if you're going to prosecute somebody, right? If you're grabbing evidence in a criminal investigation, well, it could very likely result in, an indictment, maybe an arrest. Brian Hooker, you watching? This is what's happening in the wake of you bouncing out of the Bahamas after your wife, according to you, bounced off the back of your dinghy in what looked to me like dead calm waters. Because I've seen the video and the photographs of that exact time in that exact place at Aunt Pat's Bay off Elbow Key. And your description of the Andrea Gale storm kind of wind was bullshit. It was nice and calm. 7:30 to 7:45 when you said you left the Abaco Inn and went in your dinghy towards your sailboat, Soulmate, but never made it. The sea was angry, my friends. I think you were trying to get everybody to believe. And out she bounced, and the current and the tide was pulling us apart, and I just couldn't rescue her, and it blew me all the way to Marsh Harbor. 4 miles away, 9 hours. Horse shit. Horse shit. It's a legal term. Yeah, so we've seen the videos of that exact time of day. We've seen the reports from other witnesses who were calmly buzzing along with their kids in the dinghy. No problem at all, flat calm. Basically, we've seen the evidence that says you lied. Flat out lied, which is never good when you're talking to police. Really shitty when you're talking to rescuers who searched and searched for your wife based on the shit that you told them, the lies that you told them. You said she was wearing a black two-piece bathing suit? Bullshit. She had a nice aquamarine bathing suit cover on and a royal blue Conch Republic scarf on her head and possibly even a black fanny pack. with her dry bag. Never mentioned any of that to them, did you? No, you just didn't. Did you just forget because you don't bother taking note of your actual wife that you spent a whole day with? Or were you trying to just cover up the fact that she had on a different blue cover-up and headscarf? Did she maybe disappear only wearing that bathing suit? Because why would that be? Someone would have had to take it off her, that bathing suit cover-up. I wonder if that happened. I wonder if that happened, Brian. It's a good question. Well, the evidence will bear out. In any case, I am loving the fact that that boat is now being treated at the crime scene it is and hasn't had this treatment until now. 5 weeks after the fact. And finally, the evidence bags come out and that boat is being raided. So here's what I can tell you about things I know personally about Mariner's equipment and what I know about this particular boat from people who know the hookers, friends of theirs, pictures that I've seen on board, photographs, videos, witness reports of people who have been on board, things that I know from people who have seen the equipment on board. Let's just start with the most important thing, my humble opinion. Cameras. Like, holy shit. I didn't know it until just recently. Yeah, there's like what look to be maybe Nest cameras. I'm not sure. I can't tell you the exact camera system, but I'm working on it. Cameras under the bimini. Holy shit, Batman. There's a camera system, a security system under the bimini. Is it possible that it might have actually triggered a motion sensor and caught something happening on board? Like, I don't know, maybe Brian and Lynette actually arriving at Soulmate after leaving the Abaco Inn? Horse shit with the bounced out and the waves and the oh no. No. It's my opinion alone, that they made it back to Soulmate and that they boarded Soulmate. And Jesus, I hope that that motion sensor triggered that camera and watched the two of you scrambling up into the cockpit and then maybe hanging out under the bimini and then going down below. Who knows? I sure hope it did. And I hope it's in the cloud, just like the Nancy Guthrie videos, right? Because the cloud can actually get that stuff even when you don't think it can. Boy, I hope something's on there. Just imagine. Imagine if that video exists. I mean, what else is the camera for but security? You're not there to videotape yourself in the bimini picking your nose while you're crossing the Atlantic. No, it's there for security. Just like those big trigger lights that we saw in all the riggings. Big spotlights, you know, for safety. Because when you're a liveaboard, as Brian and Lynette have been for the last 4 years, you need safety. This is your home. And it is real easy to come up in a quiet little dinghy, tie up, and steal all your shit. Even hold a gun to your head and steal you. All right? That happens. And so people who live aboard have to be safe. Many of them have weapons. We saw a big long knife in our video. Kind of looked like a samurai sword. It goes by real quick, but when we slowed it down, we saw a samurai sword style knife down below in that cabin. Maybe that was used for security. I mean, listen, if I were living aboard, I'd have something like that. Probably a couple of guns too. You've got to be safe. You just don't know what pirates will do. And that is exactly what they are. It's not a joke. The pirates, they come on board, they steal your shit, they hold a gun to you, they take everything. So security-wise, not surprised that there isn't this kind of weird old samurai sword down below. Maybe there were weapons that we don't know about. But the cameras and the trigger lights, I just hope all that shit was tripped when I assume, this is my guess, I don't know this, Brian hasn't been charged with anything yet. Tick-tock, Brian Hooker. My assumption is that all that shit was triggered by motion sensor. And I really hope the cameras caught it. Because at trial, that shit's what you call compelling. That shit's what lawyers call bad facts, you know. And defense lawyers usually call holy shit. Yeah. Because if Brian and Lynette got on board Soulmate, his entire story is a lie. And so the next question would be, since you got on board Soulmate, Brian, where's Lynette? What happened? Why the big old story that ran everybody ragged trying to find your missing wife, wasting all the resources of the folks in the Abacos, of the United States Coast Guard Investigative Services and the Royal Bahamian Police Force? And how about all of the people invested in justice for Lynette? Because if this story of yours is proven in a court of law to be untrue, you are a royal motherfucker. Not just for what you did to Lynette, but to everybody else. But oh my God, where is Lynette? What happened to her, really? Because this bounce bullshit is as good as your story of bouncing out of the Bahamas when you told everybody the day before you'd never leave till you found her. Ick. Some husband you are. And how about stepfather to Carly? You've been her stepfather since she was about 3. Not one phone call since all of this? Nothing? If your story is true, why aren't you visiting her and commiserating with her, planning for some kind of a memorial or funeral with her? And how about Lynette's mom? How about commiserating with her too? If your story is true, Brian, wouldn't you be commiserating with the family about the horrors that were visited upon you? It sure is telling that you're not, that you just went underground, that you just disappeared to Northern California where your mom and your sister live. Be interested to hear what your sister has to say about all this. The one that came to the Bahamas to help you in your time of need? Help find Lynette? Got you a lawyer? Yeah, be interesting to hear what they have to say. Can't wait to hear what they have to say. Yeah. And what about your trip to Michigan, where you were spotted by old friends that don't really like you much because they told me they saw you? How about that? What were you doing in Michigan? Hiring another lawyer? Because I think you know what's coming, Brian Hooker TikTok. TikTok. I can't wait. So here's something else. This raid above or aboard Soulmate is so critical because Mariner's equipment basically can tell you everything about what people are doing on board. I told you about the trigger lights, the motion sensors, maybe those cameras, right? How about just the Starlink that's on the mast? I was told before I ever saw it that it was positioned very high up on the mast so that it had like a nice broad range, which means that if Brian, and we know his story's bullshit, the bounced out business, if Brian and Lynette approached Soulmate, they would have connected to that Starlink before they even touched the hull of that 46-foot sloop. Okay? They would have connected. Their phones would have connected. Both of them had phones. And their watches would have connected because both of their watches were connected to their phones. So the digital exhaust that probably exists on that Starlink, can't wait. I can't wait to see all of this stuff when it's made public. Quick note from my sponsor. I think if you know me, you probably know my puppy dog Atlas, who I lost in November. I may not personally have a cat because I had Atlas, but I know a lot of you do have cats. And if your kitty cat runs the house the way most cats do, then you already know. They are not just pets. They are tiny little dictators with whiskers. And if you're going to serve your little ruler dinner every night, it probably shouldn't be a bowl of processed mystery meat. And that is where Smalls comes in. Smalls makes fresh cat food with protein-packed recipes, preservative-free, 100% human-grade ingredients, the kind you would actually recognize from your own fridge. And cat parents are noticing the difference. After switching to Smalls, 88% reported overall health improvements, like better digestion and more energy, softer coats, shinier fur, fewer hairballs, and my favorite one, less stinky litter boxes. So try Smalls and give your cat food that actually looks like food. For a limited time, because you are a Drop Dead Serious listener, you get 60% off your first order. Hello? And free shipping. It doesn't end. And then guess what? Free treats for life. Just head to smalls.com/DDS. That's 60% off your first order plus free shipping and treats for life. Free when you head to smalls.com/DDS. Your tiny little ruler will thank you. There's other stuff too, like the Mariner's batteries. There's a whole system of like batteries that go on board these liveaboard sailboats, these keel boats, and many of them that are on the newer side, they actually have like a diary. They like log all the action when electricity is triggered and is needed. So let's just say someone gets on board and turns on the tap because they want to wash the salt water off their hands. Well, the action of turning on the water sets off the electrical, and that registers on the battery. Boom, nice little line item saying action at this time. Well, how much action happened if/when Brian and Lynette made it to Soulmate, got up on board, lights are triggered, maybe the camera's triggered, maybe the water goes off, because I've already learned from Carly that Lynette's habit is to get up on board and have a shower after being out in the salt water all day, right? Shower off, maybe get dressed into something comfortable, take your Apple Watch off because it's almost dead because it doesn't have a good battery, put it on the charger. Oh, darn, Brian, did you not know she did that? Presumably, because the authorities have that Apple Watch. At least they have a powder pink wristband Apple Watch that was on the boat that you probably, given how much you love your wife, you probably didn't even fucking know she was wearing an Apple Watch that day, or an aquamarine bathing suit cover-up, or a Conch Republic royal blue scarf on her head. You probably didn't give a flying fuck what she was wearing. You probably didn't even register what she was wearing, and that is going to be a bad fact, my guess, if/when you get indicted and have to defend yourself in a court of law. Because I believe that you just didn't think about those clothes or that Apple Watch when you made up this whole story about bouncing off the back of the boat. Can't wait. Can't wait to hear what your story is. In any case, all those things that you do on board, when you connect to the Wi-Fi, when you start maybe checking in on your email or Facebook, or maybe doing some social media, or maybe turning on the oven or the stove to cook something or have a cup of coffee or open the fridge, all these things require electricity. And you can't tell me that the boat might have been out of electricity all day sitting there, because it is lined with solar panels. This is how they live. Lined with solar panels, bringing in the sunshine all day, and we know it was a beautiful day that day. Everybody was out at Tahiti Beach sunning themselves, including Brian and Lynette, all day, sunning themselves and enjoying themselves, and then dinghying over, Brian and Lynette, all the way to the Abaco Inn. Sunset was gorgeous. Plenty of sun all day to load up those solar panels. So there was plenty of electricity on board Soulmate. Electricity to use if somebody, say, got on board Soulmate and did some living until they were no longer living. All that's going to register on that battery like a nice little forensic diary. So let's just hope, and I am assuming, because CGIS, they're no dummies. These guys know. They are the FBI of the water. This is what they do. They know boats. They know how these things work. So they're going to go take that battery. And here's the best news I got. Well, I've had a lot of good news along the way. Like the interdiction was probably the best news. Really good news that I got was that Brian and Lynette's battery conked out, or something went wrong with it a couple years ago, and they got a new system, like a brand new system. And from what I gather from my marine expert sources, Blaine, I'm looking at you, all the new systems come with these loggable usage systems. Which means if it's a new system, it's got forensic information on it. And okay, yeah, I know you're going to say in the comments, and it's totally cool, some things on board just go automatically, like the fridge and the freezer and all that. That will kick in all day long. That stuff, understandable. Those are going to be kind of standard. They'll look the same all the time. It's the other action that is not normal if no one's on board. Because if you believe Brian's horseshit, no one got back on that boat, at least from the time that they were on their way to the Abaco Inn. That was 4:30 they arrived over there. So there should be no action at all from 4:15 p.m. because they arrived at the Abaco Inn at 4:30. I know they were over at Tahiti Beach as well. Maybe they skipped right by the boat as they went over to the Abaco Inn. Maybe they stopped on the boat. Don't know, don't care. At 4:15, that's how much time you need in order to make it to the Abaco Inn. So there should be no human activity on board Soulmate past 4:15 until the very next morning, when that jackass was brought over by fire and rescue to come back to his boat after being rescued from being marooned over on Marsh Harbor shores. Horse shit. The resources you took from everybody in your story. So yeah, I'm super excited to see CGIS agents processing all that stuff. I mean, there was one black box that was like very electronics looking, even from our, far distant position. And can I just say, Lydia, girl, I owe you. You are amazing, helping me to get these pictures today. I just want to let you know that Lydia is with Smokin' Fish Charters in Fort Pierce. They have been amazeballs to me. I owe them. I've got to buy them a pina colada next time I see them. I'm going to make a special trip. Thank you, Lydia, for getting these incredible pictures showing the processing of the forensic booty. This is going to be my new favorite term, forensic booty, that was obtained off of Soulmate. I know a bunch of people have been reporting. We don't know if they're forensically processing. Oh yeah, they are. They've been doing it all day. And not only that, somebody else, I think CBS might have reported that they're far along or something. No, this thing is so in its infancy. They just got this boat. Those warrants must have just come through. They just boarded today and started scraping stuff out of there and then putting it in the evidence bag. So you know what happens now? A lot of that has to be analyzed. And so, as I understand it, CGIS works really well in the sandbox with the other federal agencies like the FBI, like the lab at Quantico, Virginia. And so a lot of that, my presumption is that will be sent there for analysis to get everything they need to know about what happened on that battery. What happened on that Starlink? How many little pieces of business do we got? The digital exhaust. Keep your eyes on that prize, because I think that is going to be the end of Brian Hooker and the beginning of real justice for Lynette. So yeah, this is a big day. It was a huge day when they hauled that thing in over the weekend. And thank you so much to my team that helped me get all those videos. I mean, I don't know if you saw the last episode, but it's exclusive and you should. And huge thanks to Michaela, Captain's on Call, Captain Tony, you're amazing. Wendy, who helped us to track that boat all the way from the Bahamas. Captain Lou, oh my God, I love you. The Captain's Network that I have made, seriously, I'm thinking of like chucking all of this to just go and do Murder on the High Seas, a podcast where I'm just on a boat at all times. And don't think I won't do it. I'm like this close to doing it. I've just met so many amazing people who have helped us to track, the boat, Brian's goings on, and the things that have happened in the various areas around where Brian said this happened. So I want to switch gears a little bit now to show you something else completely exclusive and super interesting. You have probably heard me waxing poetic about where I think, if Brian killed Lynette, where he might have buried Lynette, because she is not in the Sea of Abaco. We know that. It's too shallow. It's like a bathtub, 4, 6, 8 feet at the very deepest, somewhere 15, and clear as a bell. You can see the bottom everywhere. And so everybody I've spoken to who has the kind of wisdom that you would need to get this answer has said, if she's in the Sea of Abaco, we'd have found her on the bottom, on the shores. Even if there were shark activity, there would have been something called, this is a technical term, particle, meaning pieces, clothing, limbs, anything. Sharks don't eat you all up, right? There would have been something that they would have found in the extensive searching of the shore areas with the wind, wave, tide patterns, all of that. It is definitive, really, that didn't happen, that Lynette is not in the Sea of Abaco, which leaves buried. So I can tell you this, again, from my experts who I have relied on, locals who have been there forever and ever, multiple sources amongst the locals say that this is basically a limestone part of the world. The Abacos and all the keys are limestone. You dig like a foot down and you're going to hit limestone and coral. And it is not the kind of place that you can easily bury a body. That leaves the beaches. And let's just say if Brian killed her on board Soulmate and then waited for the cover of darkness to load her body into a dinghy and bury her somewhere, it's got to be a place that he would know, because he's going to do it in the dark. And he's got to do it fast, and he's got to be efficient because he don't want to get caught, right? So there are a couple of places that are close enough to where Soulmate was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay off of Elbow Key, and still within the range of his battery power, because that little dinghy has an electric engine. And even with the spare battery, he's only got about 8 hours if he's fully charged on both batteries. And he's been out all day, right? Brian and Lynette have been out all day doing long, long treks with the dinghy. So I don't think there's a full battery on battery number 1. There might be some recharging if they got back on board Soulmate, which I think they did. So there might have been some recharging going on between the time they got back on Soulmate, let's say around 7:45, and the time that Lynette was no longer with us. And then the execution of the plan could have been hours later. So could have charged a lot of the dead, used up battery and then had the spare full battery. So there was, somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, I'm going to guess, of battery power if he's going slow. If he's going slow, like 2 to 4 miles an hour. So there's a couple of places that me and all the gang that have been working on this, the experts, those in the know, the locals in the Bahamas, people who live there, people who work there, people who know the terrain, people who know the tides, people who know way more than I do. The expectation is that some of the possibilities are over on Tahiti Beach around on the Atlantic side, because that's sort of more, it's just more remote. A lot of the people who have fun at Tahiti Beach are all over on the Sea of Abaco side, but it's remote and it's out of the way. You wouldn't be seen, and not a lot of people go over there. Not a lot of people walk over there. Certainly, it's not as busy as the Abaco side. So maybe over there, that might be a 5-minute dinghy ride, maybe 10. You can do it in the dark, and he knows it because he's been there. So that's place number 1. Place number 2, I showed you in another episode, and it was over north of Ampats Bay, all the way up Elbow Key, going north, and then round into Hopetown Harbor. And if you curve in before you get into Hopetown Harbor and all the boats, there's like a mangrove area, very secluded. No tourists go there. It would be a great place to tangle a body. You could always have plausible deniability later saying, well, body must have just floated there. But it would decompose in there. And any kind of, marks around the neck, those things, those would go away unless you broke the hyoid bone, which, by the way, could be another thing that trips him up. So position number 2, I say in that other episode I did up near Hopetown Harbor. Okay, up there. Marsh Harbor, we've already talked to you in another episode about Snapper Point, an old abandoned marina where Lynette and Brian spent a day with their stepdaughter, Carly Aylesworth, who was visiting them on board for a period of time in February. They have on their social media that they were at Snapper Point. That is an old, abandoned, wrecked out, beautiful resort that got decimated in Hurricane Dorian, and it's just a carcass of what it used to be. But a really good place where nobody goes. It's just not heavily touristed because it's awful. It's a mess. It's awful. So could she be buried on one of the beaches there? He'd be familiar. And he was going to float over to Marsh Harbor. 9 hours floating with no power. She took the keys when she bounced out. Bullshit. So, yeah, I would say Snapper Point Marina and the beaches there, also very possible. Digging, I don't know. Again, pitch black. You don't just have a shovel on board necessarily, right, when you're on a sailboat. Maybe they did for sand beach days. I don't think so, but okay. When you're a liveaboard, you have very little stuff, and you can't go out to Home Depot to grab a shovel at 8 o'clock at night. So got to make do with what he's got. And could he have dug with the so-called missing oar? Remember the story? I lost an oar. The pin broke off and blah, liar. Could he have dug with the oar and then somehow buried the oar with her? Maybe. We did get a report of an oar found on the east side of Lubbers. No confirmation that that's the oar. So yeah. Could he have used it? Sure. Could have. Very hard to dig in the ground when you're up on those islands. Easier to dig in the sand, right? And then put the oar in there too, cover it up. But, you got to go deep, man, because if somebody finds that at some point, now you don't have so much plausible deniability. How does an oar get buried with a body, 4 feet down in the beach? You're not going deeper than 4 feet. That sand just collapses in. And again, it's late. And it's dark. You're alone. Anyway, so somewhere around Snapper Point Marina, I think that's a possibility. I don't think he's going to want to go any further south than that towards where, his boat washed up, because that's dumb. why direct everybody to a buried body, close to where you washed up? I would think he'd want to go in the polar opposite direction, which would be the points where I told you in the beginning and the next point I'm about to tell you about. And I have video of the next location. Let's start looking. I have talked at length about Lubbers Quarters, Lubbers, Lubbers Quarters. It is this beautiful little key that is right in between Marsh Harbor and Elbow Key. There are people who live and have homes on Lubbers Quarters, and in fact, Dean Zomzel, I'm looking at you, man. You've been instrumental in helping us to look through a lot of possibilities in this story. Dean Zomzel has a home on Lubbers. It faces Elbow Key, so it faces east, gets the sunrise, and they had 24-hour surveillance video that we think was looking right at Soulmate all night long when we saw these light events, the lights going on and off and flashlights coming up to what looked like, a hull, like a dinghy down low and a hull up high with its maybe motion censored triggered lights going off. So Dean lives on Lubbers, and Dean has told us, along with other folks, that they think Lubbers is a natural. It would be a place that he could get to very quickly if he needed to. Again, Brian Hooker's not charged with any crime yet. But if he did do something to Lynette and needed to get rid of her body, Lubbers Quarters would be very easy. In the dark, he already knows it, right? It's only like less than a mile across, and there are very secluded places. There are a couple of old restaurants that got really wrecked out with Hurricane Dorian, like Cracker Peas or Lubbers Landing. Those places got really hit hard in Dorian, and they're coming back. But, from what I gather, still a good place if you want to hide a body. And then there's the other side of Lubbers. Those places I just talked about, where Dean lives, Cracker Peas, Lubbers Landing, those are all on the eastern shore. But on the other shore, not as easy to get to, I'll give you that. But oh my God, what a place. Nathan again comes through for Drop Dead Serious. Nathan, thank you for sending the videos. He went and searched along the beaches on the west side of Lubbers, and he gave us all of the video of him walking those beaches, looking at debris, checking it out to see if it looked like it was anything that might have belonged to Lynette, maybe the missing oar, the dry bag, her clothes. And again, I'm going to give you caution as we look at Nathan's videos. It is, he's walking and looking, but at the same time, he's rolling his video, but his eyes are elsewhere. So if you think that he's missing something because he goes right by it, trust me, he's not. He knows what he's looking for. He knows the same things that you and I know. So if he passes by something that's green and you think, oh no, that could be Lynette's dry bag, he's looked. He's gone right up, checked things out, but kept on going as he looks at all the debris that's washed up on the beaches. And again, because this is such a huge area for sailboats and motorboats, lots of stuff flies off deck all the time. Lots of debris washes up on shore. It doesn't mean anything. It's not like a bunch of people are littering. Some people are. But generally speaking, people lose their hats, they lose their shirts, they lose their stuff off of the decks of their motorboats and sailboats, etc., all the time. So it's not unusual that there would be all of this debris up on the beaches. But these are really, really remote beaches on the backside of Lubbers. I call it the backside, but it's the western shore. And so if Brian wanted to be real sneaky, not saying he did, but if he did, he could have taken that dinghy and gone around Lubbers, because I believe that they had spent some time looking at these secluded beaches. There are a couple of beaches in their Instagram and their TikToks that I was thinking, man, these are really secluded. And some folks who know the area said it looks like that might be backside of Lubbers. Some folks have said that. So I wouldn't put it past Lynette and Brian to have had some paddleboarding time on the backside of Lubbers, again, on the western shore of Lubbers. And it is empty. You could do lots of stuff back there without anybody seeing you, especially in the pitch dark of night. And if you're familiar with it and you have a little dinghy, you can get up on those beaches and you'll know already what those shores are like and what the water's like. So there were a couple places that would be easier. I'm not saying easy, but easier. If you wanted to bury a body, they're not as visited by tourists. So less of a chance of kids, you know, let's bury ourselves in the sand and oh my God, coming across something down below, like an oar and a body. Mark my word, these places are going to get searched. They are. TikTok, Brian Hooker. TikTok. No one wants to leave these stones unturned. The people I know in the Bahamas, almost 100%. Every so often you get a jackass, but they all feel the same as I do. We need to find Lynette. We need to get justice for Lynette. Without question, everybody wants to find Lynette, and they are all pitching in to help. My God, Nathan, thank you so much for sharing with Drop Dead Serious. And by the way, thank you for doing what you're doing for Lynette. You spent so much time over at Snapper Point. And then you went and replicated all of that time over on Lubbers. Folks, this took hours and hours. This took, you know, a lot of money in boat gas to get there. Boat gas is really expensive, and it's not easy to just zip around from Marsh Harbor over to Lubbers and back again. It costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time, and it costs a lot of energy. So hats off to this hero, Nathan, who's been doing this, I think, not just for Lynette, for everybody, because we are all in this with you. Here's Nathan.
Hello everyone, the following videos and images that you are going to see were taken on the western side of Lubbers, facing Marsh Harbor. There were a few areas that piqued my interest today that I wanted to search. I just want to make it clear that I am not finished searching Lubbers. I'm not finished searching the west side. I intend to pick up and resume searching within the following days or the following weeks. I am not finished yet. And if there are any more areas which anybody watching locally, because I know some locals also watch this channel, please let me know. I would love to search independently or with somebody. It does not matter.
I want to jump in here so you guys see just how extensive Nathan's search was. He didn't just stick to the beaches. He went into the rough, right? Like, this is really arid and desert-like almost, but you can also see that it's rough. It ain't soft and lovely. This would be, imagine, in the pitch black. Place where you've never been before, this would be very difficult. And you can hear the crunching. Right? Now just imagine, it's all limestone down below there. So you are not going to get you're not going to be able to get down very deep if what your intention is to bury a body. And are there possibilities? Water bodies inside? Yes. But don't forget that cadaver dogs, they can actually smell decomposition even when there's a water body, because the way it was explained to me is that the oils from decomposition actually surface, and then they reside on the surface of the water. And that is what a cadaver dog can smell. And apparently, this is good for 30 feet. So a body that is 30 feet down still can't escape the magic of a cadaver dog. This is interesting too, because you see these roadways. I'm not there, so I can't tell you definitively, but I do know this. Hurricane Dorian really took the boots to everything in the Abacos, and Lubbers was not able to escape that either. So it's possible there were like more structures that these roads serviced. And in the ensuing years, lots of overgrown, woods and shrubberies, etc. But it's just interesting to see that there are these roads. Now, did Lynette and Brian know about these roads? Maybe. Doesn't seem to be on their social media, and Lubbers anyway. It doesn't mean they didn't know about them, which means could that have been in the back of Brian's mind? Again, if Brian did something to Lynette, and if Brian needed to get rid of Lynette. Not saying he did. He's not charged with anything yet. Again, don't worry if he passes by something that's green. Don't worry. He put eyes on everything. Just because the camera's passing by doesn't mean he didn't focus his eyes on stuff. And he knows to look for the things in particular that Lynette had on her at last sight. And that is the, aquamarine colored bathing suit cover up, the blue Conch Republic headscarf, and that lime green dry bag. It goes, without saying here how beautiful this place is. Look at this. These secluded areas where you have your own beautiful, calm, bay that's on the leeward side of the wind. Let's not forget, the wind would have been hitting the other side here of Lubbers. And so it would have been a lot more calm to come in here on this side. This western shore of Lubbers would have been again in the leeward side of that ferocious wind. And I do know, by the way, that the wind definitely did pick up later that night. So if there were any discrepancies in the weather early on in our reporting, that could have been it. Lots of people might have been out and saw like whitecaps later, but we saw video and pictures of nice, still, calm waters on the lee side of Elbow Key when Brian says it was like a raging storm. Bullshit. Just absolute bullshit. But this would be calm as well because it's protected. So it would be easy to bring your dinghy in here. So again, Nathan, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I mean, talk about a village. This crime, I believe it's a crime. I think this is going to be crowd solved by people like Nathan and Captain Ronnie and Wendy and Michaela and Jim and Pete in the Bahamas, right? David, you know who you are. You're amazing, you guys, that you're all committed to helping in this search, in not only the search for Lynette, the search for justice for Lynette. And then back stateside, my God, again, Captain Lou, Captain Tony, captains on call. You guys have been incredible. Lydia, wow, just nonstop helping. Michaela and McKenna, you guys, thank you. Smokin' Fish, Charters. These are the folks that are helping to get this thing solved and then let you know what's happening every step of the way. It's just been, I'm just so thankful for everybody. And Segis, you guys are dogged in the pursuit of justice. You're not letting this go. And I am, for one, very appreciative of your hard work. The fact that you went and got that damn boat, that was just... Like I said, you should see the Mother's Day episode, but that was a wonderful Mother's Day present for Darlene, Lynette's mom, and for Carly, Lynette's daughter. That was a hard Sunday for them to get through. Hey, listen, we do this a lot, and we ask you if you know anything, if you can help our mission here, join our village. We have a very easy email address, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. By all means, drop us a line. Let us know how you might be able to help. If you have small boats in the Fort Pierce area, if you've got small boats or even larger boats in the Abacos, if you have any homes that you would be so kind as to either reduced rate or gratis help out search teams that are planning to go, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. If you have tips for the Coast Guard that is doing this criminal investigation, for the Coast Guard Investigative Services, this is easy. They got a full app that you can do anonymous tips. Just CGIS tips, CGIS tips. You can find the app and you can give them tips without, totally anonymous. So everything helps. Everything that I get, I turn over to them. They cannot do it the other way around. So I'm always thankful if you send them to me as well. But I understand if you just want to send it to them. That makes perfect sense. But listen, also, we'd love to have you subscribe and like this video and join our club. I'm going to do another Ask Me Anything coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening and watching. And for all of you who have helped, you have no idea how much I appreciate. This is, like I said, crowd solving. Crime crowd solving. I love you, man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.